Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2023. I know it's hard to believe, but it is a new year. And of course, I know as many of you, you're probably thinking about what's going to be my New Year's resolution. So I'm really glad that one of your New Year's resolutions is the GMAT. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So today we'll talk about the GMAT in general, how to study for the test, what the test is all about, and it might not be what you actually think it is. We will also talk about how to study for the test. We'll talk specifically about some quantitative strategies that hopefully will show you that the GMAT isn't just about being good in math. So if you came here because you feel like, oh, geez, I'm not really good at math, I have to learn a lot of math formulas, I think that you'll be the judge by the end of the seminar today, how much of the math formulas you might need to know, and how difficult is really the test. I think you're going to see that for yourself as well towards the end of the seminar. I also want to spend just a few minutes talking about the entire MBA application process, because many of you are thinking of applying soon, perhaps for September 2023. There are still some schools, especially some schools in Canada, that are still open for the applications. So I think it's important for us to be aware of some of the timelines as well, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. So let's start talking about the GMAT. First of all, thanks so much for sharing where you guys are coming from. We have people here from all over the world, and I'm actually so glad that you're joining us. Some of you are joining us early in the morning. You're on the other side of the world. I am located in the Eastern time zone. So today, I really want this to be an interactive experience. I don't want you to just sit there and kind of watch, because then there's no difference between watching this seminar and watching some YouTube video, right? So I'd like really for you to grab a pen and paper and participate. And this is not a pre-recorded seminar, so if you type a question in the chat box or in the Q&A box, I'll be able to see it and I'll be able to answer your question. So this is going to be very, very interactive. Now, normally with our regular classes where we teach the GMAT over 6 weeks, we would let everybody be on the webcam and everybody be able to ask questions and unmute yourself. But today, of course, just because of the number of people, we can't really have that experience. But we will participate through the polls and through the chat. So you should be able to find the chat box and type there. So please let me know in the chat box if you can hear me well, if you can see everything well, and then I'll know that we are ready to start. Just type yes in the chat box, or let me know if everything's good. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll start actually dealing with some real GMAT questions. Okay, perfect. All right, I see a few people are saying yeah. Perfect. All right. So some of the things we are going to be doing today, I have to warn you, they will take you a little outside of your comfort zone. Now, if you don't feel like you have a math background, some of these questions might bring you back to your secondary school. And maybe it was a really long time ago. So please don't worry. We are going to break everything down step by step, so you'll know exactly how to deal with these questions by the time we're done. Also, if you do have a math background, or maybe you have an engineering background, then maybe you're used to doing questions a certain specific way. And I'm going to show you today some other ways of doing the questions. And these other ways, again, might take you a little outside of a comfort zone. So you might change your perspective a bit on what the math is all about on the GMAT. So again, grab that pen and paper and make sure you're in a learning zone. This is when we are slightly uncomfortable, but we're still trying to absorb information and follow along. If at any point in time you feel like information is getting over your head and it's a little too much, just let me know in the chat box. Don't stay in a panic zone, and I will break things down for you step by step. Again, if there was something that you're not comfortable with, that either means it was a really long time ago and you totally forgot it, or it's just too complicated and all we need to do is break it down into smaller steps. So let's get started. Oh, thanks so much. Ty, if you let me know where you are from Asia, that'd be great. We have a few people joining us from Asia as well. So I know it's very early morning for you. So let's deal with one of the GMAT questions. I'm going to show you a question. And I'll ask you to use only your pen and paper. Please do not try to Google this question. Please don't try to use a calculator. And within about 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is the right answer? I'm going to launch this quick poll so that you can share your answer when you think you know what it is. And then, of course, we'll take up this question together. All right, it's been about 45 seconds. I know this question might sound tough, but it actually is not. And if you felt that 45 seconds is not enough, let's actually break it down step by step. Let me go ahead and close the poll. And just to make it more fun, I'm actually going to share with you what everybody voted for. So here, as you could see, more people voted for C, a few people voted for A, B, and D. First of all, let's reveal what is the correct answer. And the answer is C, stands for correct answer. Now, I just have to tell you right off the bat, if you didn't get the right answer, please don't beat yourself up. Just maybe pat yourself on the back. In fact, we're going to play a little game. Here in my class, there won't be right and wrong answers. There will only be the answers that correctly answer the questions and the answer that we can learn from. So if you didn't get C, then don't worry, we'll learn something. This is important. The only time when it matters how well you do is the real test. So please don't try to have any ego battles with the GMAT if you got some other answer choice. So what is it that we needed to know in order to answer this question? Maybe let's answer this question. What did we need to know? Well, first of all, of course, we needed to know or maybe remember what is an exponent. And just for the record, 3 to the power of 3 is simply 3 times 3 times 3. And that is, again, for the record, is not 9, but 27. I know many people believe that 3 to the power of 3 is 9. It's not, 27. Now, we had 1 to the power of 1, which is, of course, 1. 2 to the power of 2, which is simply 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. 27 plus 4 plus 1 gives us 32. Now, if you remember, the number 32 itself wasn't in the answer choices, so we needed to take one more step. Or we can either remember our powers of 2, or we can simply multiply 2 onto itself until we get to 32, and then count how many 2's we have, and then we get 5 2's. Now, I know for some of you might feel like you are going back to grade 1. Believe it or not, understanding how the numbers work and understanding what is an exponent and how exponents work can actually help you a lot. And it can help you with many of the formulas, like if you're trying to do 2 to the power of 2 times 2 to the power of 3, that's actually 5 2's. So that's 2 to the power of 5. So many of these formulas you can actually remember if you remember what is an exponent. And in fact, the GMAT is focused so much more on testing how well you can understand something than how well you can actually calculate something, because they don't give us a calculator, so they can't really possibly expect us to do some long calculations, but they do expect that we understand what we're doing. So what was an exponent was the first thing that we needed to know. Of course, we also needed to know how to add and multiply, right? Because, 2 times 2, that's 4, and, plus 1, that's 5. But that was really it. That's all we needed to do. No formulas, nothing else. As long as we know how to add and multiply, we should be able to deal with this question. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, Sergey, that I'm sure that's very, very easy, and the math on the GMAT is going to get a lot harder than this. Well, let's ask people who make the test. We belong to a small group of organizations that get invited to Reston, Virginia, which is the headquarters of the GMAT, every year to talk to the people who work for the GMAT and share some ideas and hear from them. And here's what they actually told us at one of these seminars. They said, look, make sure you tell all of your students that what they need to know for the GMAT is not more than what's generally taught in secondary school. And by generally taught, we mean arithmetic, some number properties, some elementary algebra, so no calculus, no complicated logarithms and all these other things, no trigonometries, just some very commonly known geometry concepts. So for most people, the stuff that we learned in the middle school, not even in the high school. There's a very, very small number of questions that test things such as probability and combinatorics that perhaps many of us have learned in the high school, but that's a very small part of the test. The majority of the test is from grades 5 to 8. So you might be wondering, well, okay, well, if this is like a middle school exam, then how come it's so hard? And how come so many people, even people with a math background, don't do well? Well, before we answer this question, let's actually take a look at a different GMAT question that is going to look almost exactly the same like the question we've just done, just the numbers are going to be a little bit different. In fact, this question maybe is even a little easier because the answers contain numbers and not exponents. So I'll give you about a minute or so to figure out the answer, and just please don't use a calculator. You can't do that on the test anyway, so why do this now? So about a minute to figure out what is the answer. Wow, time flies by very quickly, or maybe very slowly if you're not getting close to the answer. In any case, if you're almost close to getting the answer, then please select it. I'm going to end the poll in 5 seconds. All right, let me go ahead and end the poll and show you the results. So as you could see, most people who did answer chose D. So I want to ask you, how did you do this question? What was your approach? Maybe please put it in the chat box. And I have to tell you, only about half of the people actually answered this question. So of the people who answered, most people chose D. Well, take a look in a moment whether D is the right answer, but let me know, what was the strategy you've used? Please type it in the chat box. And I'll show you different ways of doing this question. Now, of course, one of the ways of doing this question is just simply go by what kind of looks right, or just go by the theory. Somebody's saying, I just guessed. So how can we do this in a theory way, or what we call the high school way? Well, one of the things we can do is just simply calculate the numbers, right? Because when many people look at this question and say, okay, well, the GMAT obviously has math, so I need to know how to calculate for the business school. So, 14 to the power of 4, without the calculator, it's a little painful, but, hopefully I don't have these many questions that would require these long calculations. So 14 to the power of 4, that's a number, 15 to the 5, 16 to the 6. And if I add them all up, I will get a D. I'm curious if anybody actually did this, because it's going to probably take about 8 minutes to do if we don't have a calculator. So that's one approach. And of course, this approach worked in a previous question where the numbers were simple. This is considered a harder question where the numbers are bigger, and obviously we can't really do this. We can't really do what we did in the high school. So we need to do something else. So let's take a look at a couple of different strategies. One of the strategies, so Yasaman saying count the digits. So let's see what could be one of the strategies. So one of the strategies here could be what is called the unit digit strategy. So the unit digit strategy essentially works this way. When we are doing a long multiplication, addition, or subtraction, the strategy does not work for division, but it does work for the other 3 operations. We will start our operation with the final digit. And in terms of multiplication, we are going to multiply 6 by 7. Then we're going to get 42. We're going to carry the 4 over to the next digit, the 10th digit, and the 2 is going to remain where it is. The 2 is in what's called the units digit. By the way, the GMAT always calls this the units digit and never calls this the ones digit, even though at the end it tells us how many ones do we have in a number. So that's why we call this the units digit strategy. 6 times 7 is 42. 2 is going to be the last number. And no matter what else we do here in this one multiplication, we're always going to get 2 at the end. Because the GMAT is a multiple choice exam, we can simply look through the answer choices, and if only one of them ends in 2, we are done. We do not need to calculate the answer. We just simply need to find the answer. And guess what? On the GMAT, unlike some other tests, there's always only one right answer and always 4 wrong answers among the always 5 answer choices in the quantitative section. All right, well, you'll say, well, geez, I'm not trying to multiply here, so how can I use this strategy for this question? Well, what are we dealing with here, really? 14 to the power of 4 is just simply 14 multiplied into itself 4 times. And then we're trying to add some numbers, so just simply addition and multiplication. We can certainly use this strategy. So let's see how we can do that. And hopefully we don't have to do too much work, but let's see. 14 to the power of 1, that's of course 14. There's just a number multiplied onto itself once, so there's nothing else that we need to do. How about 14 squared? Does anybody know what's 14 squared? If you do, please put it in the chat box. If you don't, that's okay. If you do, that's impressive. And you actually should know that for the GMAT, what's 14 squared. Please don't use a calculator. That's something you're supposed to remember. But if you don't, that's okay, because we are just concerned with the last digit, with the units digit. So 14 squared is just like 4 times 4. Again, don't care about the other digits. 4 times 4 is 16. 1 gets carried over. I'm going to stop right here. 14 squared ends in a 6. By the way, that's 196. But doesn't matter. It ends in a 6. Okay, let's keep going. I need to get to 14 to the power of 4. So 14 cubed will simply mean 14 squared times 14. So I'm going to take a number that ends in a 6, which is 14 squared, and I'm going to multiply it by another number that ends in a 4. So 4 times 6, that's of course 24. You can see how beautiful is this strategy. I never care about other digits. I just multiply the last digits, get rid of everything except for the units digit, and just keep going. So 14 to the power of 3 ends in a 4. 14 to the power of 4 will now be 14 cubed times 14, which is a number that ends in a 4. 14 cubed times another number that ends in a 4, which is 14 itself. and I'm going to get 16. Again, get rid of the 1. 6 is left. So 14 to the power of 4 ends in a 6. That's what I discovered. Now, let me ask you a question. What if the question told me 14 to the power of 1,000? I need to figure out the units digit of 14 to the power of 1,000. Would I need to go all the way to 1,000 to try to figure out the units digit? Or can anybody tell me in the chat box, what is going to be the units digit of 14 to the power of 1,000? Let me know. Just take a look at what we've just done, and let me know if you can figure out what is going to be the units digit of 14 to the power of 1,000. All right, I see somebody typing it in the Q&A box. If you can please do it in the chat box, that will just make things easier because my Q&A box is way out there. It's mostly for questions that we will answer at some point. Awesome, thank you so much. It is 6, of course, because you would probably notice there is a pattern. And if the power is odd, then the number at the end is 4. If the power is even, the number at the end is 6. 1,000 is even, so 14 to the power of 1,000 is having a 6 at the end. All right, so we're done with 14. How about 15? What's going to be the units digit of 15 to the power of 5? (15 to the power of 5, the units digit is 5 times 5, 25. 5 times 5, 25. Some of you are still in the New Year's mood. Okay, awesome. Yes. Okay, a few people learned how to use the chat box. Great. Let's wake up. I know it's the evening, but that's the only way we can learn. All right. How about 16? 16 to the power of anything pretty much is, what are we going to have at the end? 6 times 6, 36. Yes, thank you. Okay, now a few people are answering. Perfect. 6 times 6, 36. 6 times 6, 36. So no matter how many times we multiply in a number that ends in a 6, we're always going to get a 6 at the end. So what did we just learn? We learned that when we raise the numbers to powers, we always have a pattern. So 4 had an alternating pattern, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6. 5 had always the same units digit. 6 had always the same units digit. We have a total of 10 digits from 0 to 9. All of them have a pattern. Some of them have a pattern of 1, which means it always repeats. Like, for example, 0 to the power of any number is always going to get a 0 at the end. Like 10 squared is 100. 1 at the end, a units digit of 1 to any power is also going to give us always a 1 at the end. All of the other digits have patterns anywhere from 2 to 4. So numbers 4 and 9, for example, have patterns of 2. That means they always just alternate. And the numbers 2, 3, 7, and 8 have the patterns with the length of 4. That means they repeat after every 4 digits, 4 powers. All right, so here we're dealing with 4, 5, and 6. If we now were to add all of these numbers, remember the strategy works for multiplication, addition, as well as subtraction. Just you have to be careful with subtraction because sometimes you have to borrow, but with addition, there's nothing to borrow, so very easy. The first number ended in a 6, the second number ended in a 5, the third number ended in a 6. If we add all of them up, we're going to get 6 plus 5 plus 6, which is 17. Again, we only care about the last digit, so the last digit is 7. How many answer choices end in a 7? Only 1. That's it, we're done. And we can do this in 2 minutes if we don't know the patterns. We can do this in 30 seconds if we know the patterns. And of course, if you study for the GMAT properly, you will learn the patterns. Somebody's asking a question, where did the 5 come from? I'm not quite sure exactly what you're referring to. So if you could please type it in the chat box and let me know what exactly you're referring to, I'll be happy to elaborate on this. Hassan here is asking a very good question. What if we have 2 answer choices with the same units digit? What if there are 2 answer choices with 7? Well, obviously, this strategy works really well if you have answer choices with different units digits. If all of the answer choices have the same units digits, that is not a good strategy, right? Maybe we need to think of a different strategy, and there are lots and lots of different strategies. However, if you are dealing with powers, just like what you're dealing here, you pretty much always are dealing with units digits. And that is why having 2 answer choices with exactly the same digit is going to be very rare. However, you would notice if you look at these answer choices, B and E have exactly the same units digit of 5. So what if the units digit was 5? Is there any way that we can maybe break the tie somehow? Well, let me show you a different way of looking at this question. In fact, just to make it fun, I will work with exactly the same question. And Ty is asking how. So can you please let me know what is how? Like, what are you? How did we get to the answer, or how would we be dealing with the answer choices that have the same units digit? So I wanted to ask you, how did we actually? How could we possibly get to D if we maybe don't know the units digit strategy? Maybe if we use a different approach. Is there a different approach to this question? And the answer is yes. In fact, I'm going to intentionally use an approach where we'll have to deal with 2 answer choices and not 1. So here's an approach we can take. One of the approaches is we could use estimation. The reason why we use estimation, or we could use estimation, is the answer choices are far apart. Noticing different things in the answer choices, and of course, in a question itself, knowing what to look for, that can save you a ton of time. So the fact that the answer choices are far apart is a very good clue that perhaps we don't have to do the exact calculation. We can just do a rough calculation. And if we were to do a rough calculation, for example, in a previous example, if the answer choice was, or the units digit was 5, there's a big difference between 4 million and 180 million. I can just do a rough calculation. I can estimate approximately what it's going to be. And obviously, 4 million and close to 200 million is a huge, huge, huge difference. So it's probably going to be very easy to understand how we can do that. So how would we estimate this? If we were to estimate the answer here approximately, just do a rough estimation, which of these 3 numbers would we have to estimate? Let me know which of these three numbers would we have to estimate? Would we need to estimate 14 to the 4, 15 to the 5, 16 to the 6, or all of them? What do you think? Yeah, if you are saying 16, of course, yes. If you can please kindly use the chat box. I'm just, it's a little hard for me to look at the Q&A. I just might not get to it right away. Q&A is great if you have a question that you wish we answer at some point. We actually just need to estimate 16 to the 6. If you remember, when we did the calculation with our high school way, 14 to the 4 was 38,000, 15 to the 5 was about 700,000, and 16 to the 6 was 16 million. So the numbers grow exponentially, right? That's why we say exponential growth. It's a very fast growth. So 14 to the 4 and 15 to the 5, they're very small numbers compared to 16 to the 6. So let's just estimate 16 to the 6 and see what happens. Now, how hard it is to estimate 16 to the 6? Actually, not that hard if you know your powers of 2. Because 16 to the 6, 16 is 2 to the power of 4. And if you do 2 to the power of 4 to the power of 6, that's the same as 2 to the power of 24. 2 to the power of 10 is 1,000. 2 to the power of 20 is 1,000,000. You have 2 to the power of 20 times 2 to the power of 4, that's 16 million. If you practice these sort of mental math, and if you come to our class, we're going to tackle a few of these. We're going to show you some tricks, and there's some really good books that can teach you these basic strategies as well. Then it will literally take you like 10 seconds to estimate 16 to the power of 6. That's about 16 million. But here's a problem now. We have 2 answer choices that are close to 16 million. That probably was not random. I think this was intentional because, of course, the GMAT doesn't want to make our life very easy. That's why they created 2 answer choices that are very close. And we can see exactly the same situation in your question. What if we have 2 answer choices that end in a 7? So did this mean that our strategy was bad? No. The GMAT wants us to think it was bad because the GMAT wants to trick us into now doubting ourselves and starting to do long calculations. But the GMAT is not about long calculations because, again, we don't have a calculator. So how can we break the tie between C and D? If we already know it's about 16 million, now we just have to decide, is it C or is it D? I don't want to do the exact calculation. So how can I break the tie? Any suggestions? Let me know in the chat box. Anything you can think of that maybe a strategy we could use, some other strategy to somehow figure out? Yeah, we could use the units digits, of course, but honestly, that is going to take some time. Anything else we can do? We already know it's C or D. We just have to decide between C and D. Take a look at C and D again. What's the difference between C and D? One of them is, and another one is, yes, thank you, odd and even. One of them's even, one of them's odd. So if I simply look at my question and figure out whether I need an odd or even number, I'm done. And of course, 14 is even, 16 is even, 15 is odd. Any power of an even number is always even. Any power of an odd number is always odd. So my answer has to be odd. And if I'm about 16 million, I know the answer is D. And I can do this in 30 to 45 seconds. So as you could see, there's always more than one way of dealing with a question. Now, unfortunately, most people, when they approach the GMAT, especially most people with a math background, they're so good at doing math and they're so used to doing math, they just always do math the first way. Just let's do the calculation right away. But we have to learn some strategies. And in fact, if you learn these strategies, the math becomes not that hard. I was doing tutoring with one of our students. We give all of the people who come to our live class 3 hours of private tutoring. And I did a tutoring today with one of our students who is doing an exam tomorrow. About 2 months ago, he started with a diagnostic score of 230. And he's now scoring in the high 600s after 2 months. And he was very, very scared of math. But he's learned these tricks and these strategies. And he even admits to me that he can't do complicated math, but he kind of knows the strategies. He knows what to look for. He's looking for shortcuts that he learned in a class, and he's able to score that well. We'll see how his exam goes. I'll keep my fingers crossed, but he's scoring really well in practice tests. So let me ask you a question. What do you think really would separate somebody who gets a score of, let's say, maybe 500 from somebody who would get a score of 700 or more. And instead of us guessing, let's just, again, ask the GMAT. Here's a quote from the GMAT. It's a quote from MBA.com. It's also in the official guide. Most people never notice this quote, but here's what it says. The GMAT is not a test of knowledge. It's a test of higher order reasoning skills. That's really it. There's only one thing you can take away from this class. It's that knowledge is power is so 20th century. It doesn't work anymore. Knowledge doesn't get you anywhere. If you have a smartphone, you don't have to be smart. All of the knowledge is on Google. So it's not about having knowledge. In fact, if you like the Big Bang Theory, in episode 2, Sheldon was going around trying to convince all of his friends that he knows how to swim because he read a book on swimming. And of course, we know how well this works, right? So people who really excel at a certain skill, and using your higher order reasoning skills is a skill. Of course, the GMAT calls them a skill. So to develop a skill, we need to do things a little bit differently from developing a knowledge. How did we actually gain knowledge? How did we prepare for exams before? I don't know about you, but I certainly did this in my university when I was doing some theoretical particle physics. Sometimes I just had to read the book cover to cover, maybe a week before, try to remember and cram everything in my head so that when the professor asked me about some particles that are flying somewhere in space, I know what to say. And then, of course, a week later, I'll forget that because I don't really ever need to use that. But on the GMAT, it's not about remembering things. Just like Michael Phelps probably doesn't know what's in the book How to Swim, but he knows how to swim because he invested some time in developing the skill. And you may have heard repetition is a mother of skill. So the GMAT will require a lot of repetition. That's why sometimes people ask, well, how many questions should I do to prepare for the GMAT? Well, that depends. I've met people who did thousands of questions, but they did them the same way over and over and over again, and they never got better. Just like before I became a GMAT instructor 13 years ago, I had a job with a big company that I got after my MBA. And I've noticed some of the people have been there for like 30, 40 years. They're just waiting for their pension. And they're doing things exactly the same way they did them 30 years ago, using the same systems. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're better than me, who was there just a year, if they keep doing the same thing over and over again. So we do need to learn new skills. I'm actually going to give you the exact formula that you can follow and develop any new skill, not just the GMAT. So guess what? Here's my gift for you for the New Year's. Anything you want to achieve this year, you can follow this formula. How's that? That's a big promise, but I don't want to overpromise. So I'll deliver you on the formula. You have to execute. Now, of course, sometimes when you are developing a new skill, you need to get a little bit of a feedback, a little bit of coaching, a little bit of guidance. So I'm really glad, at least for these, we get to spend these 2 hours together, and I get to be your coach here for these 2 hours. So I'm really honored that on January 5th, you've decided to invest some time into learning the GMAT. Here's my score report, just to show you that everything's legit. And I'm showing this to impress you. It impresses me, honestly, because it took me about 2 weeks to get that score. And that is my official score. That's my first and only attempt on the GMAT. Studied for about 2 weeks. And in case you're wondering, well, of course, Sergey is some sort of a genius. Yes, no, the answer is absolutely not. I'm not a genius. The reason why I did so well on the GMAT is by the time I needed to do the GMAT, I already had the skills. It took me many years to develop these skills because in my middle school and high school, I had amazing teachers, very talented. My math teacher was just the best teacher I've ever had in my life. He taught me how to think differently. In fact, I'm now often saying that the work I do is kind of a little bit of a tribute to this gentleman that taught me how to do this sort of math. And then I had some really amazing teachers who taught me how to teach the GMAT. And that also took me, oh, I've been teaching now for 13 years. One of our instructors here at Admit Master in 1999 was named the best instructor in the world for the GMAT. So you can imagine, I have access, fortunately, I have access to some really, really good teachers. This is my math teacher. He has unfortunately passed away at the age of 95 not too long ago. So the work I do right now is kind of my tribute back to the really good teachers that I've had. In fact, funny enough, we had just finished a class at the end of December, in the middle of December. And one of our students, he's a gentleman who's very successful in business, in the mid-50s, getting back into the business school to do a PhD. And he wrote us a really nice email after the class, and he actually said, guys, you wouldn't believe it, your class was the best class I've ever taken ever in my life. Like, wow, this is great. I'm really humbled to hear these comments. So for me, it really did take me many years to learn these skills. So the question becomes, well, okay, well, what if you didn't maybe get lucky with good teachers in school? Well, it's never too late. It's never too late to learn. Our brain is always wired for learning. And here's an example. Daria, she came to us, admitted she's terrible in math, and her diagnostic score was 380. She finished a business degree. And most people are going to get super demotivated when they get 380. We get a lot of people who come to us at the scores of somewhere in 200s and 300s. And sometimes we get people already with 700s who want like a 760. And sometimes they would go to other companies, and the other companies would say, oh, you only got like 380 or 260 or 400. Yeah, you can probably improve 50 points. But just maybe tame your ambitions a bit, right? We never say this to our clients because we know anybody can get a 700. It just requires work. And of course, you have to do the work. We just teach you how to do it, but you have to do it. So here's Daria. It took her 3 months to get from 380 to 700. And I really loved how in her comments at the end of the course, she said, I learned how to think outside the box. I learned how to manage my time and stress. And I learned how to think differently. I learned how to think like a CEO. So I'm actually going to show you what it's like to think like a CEO. Don't worry, we're just getting started. We have an hour and 45 minutes. Or an hour 15 minutes. I am going to show you a lot of strategies, but I want to spend some time speaking about how to study for the test, because this is probably the most important thing. A strategy I can teach you today, you'll probably forget if you don't practice it. But the process of studying and the overall model of studying, if you remember just that, you'll be very successful in the GMAT. Now, if you ever looked at the structure of the test, and I do this a lot, I do a lot of consultations one-on-one. In fact, you can go on our website, admitmaster.com, and book a free consultation where we get to spend about 20 minutes talking about your goals, and it's completely free. That's our gift to you. So usually I ask, well, tell me, how much do you know about the GMAT? What sections are there on the GMAT? And invariably, most people are going to say, I know there's math, I know there's English, and there's something else. Almost everybody would say this. And interestingly enough, if you look through these names of the sections on the GMAT, you actually won't find the word math, just like you won't find the word English. These sections are called quantitative reasoning or verbal reasoning. We also have a section called integrated reasoning, as well as analytical writing assessment. So I think you're starting to probably notice a bit of a pattern here. In fact, the GMAT is an exam of patterns. If you get to notice patterns, if you know what patterns to look for, you'll be very successful in the GMAT. Now, only the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sections actually contribute towards your total score, 200 to 800. The other two sections don't contribute. You still need to do well on them because the business schools still get the scores. There's still scores from 0 to 6 in the essay, AWA. There's still scores of 1 to 8 in integrated reasoning. But in quant and verbal, these are the most important sections, not only because they take up more than 2/3 of the exam, but of course, because they contribute towards the score of 200 to 800. On the quantitative section, you're going to see two types of questions: problem solving and data sufficiency. We've already seen the problem solving question today. We will be looking at some data sufficiency questions as well. The verbal reasoning section, which is some people call English, it has nothing to do with your knowledge of English because we have TOEFL and IELTS for that. So this is really all about reasoning, just without any numbers. We have 3 types of questions: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. And that is something we're going to be talking about on January 18. So if you haven't signed up for our verbal refresher class, it is approximately 2 weeks from now. Please sign up on our website, admitmaster.com. Something very important that we also need to know about the verbal and the quantitative reasoning sections is they're computer adaptive. So what does it mean, computer adaptive? If anybody knows, please put it in the chat box. What does it mean the test is adaptive? How exactly is it adaptive? Because, I mean, obviously, I'm sure that everybody knows what's a computer. This is the device on which we take a test. This test is not available on pen and paper. It is a computer-based test only. It is available either on your own computer from home or on a test center computer at a special test center. We, of course, all know what is a test, but what does it mean adaptive? Well, that means the test will actually change the difficulty of the questions depending on how you do. If you do well, the test will keep giving you harder and harder questions. If you do poorly, the test will keep giving you easier and easier questions. The algorithm is pretty sophisticated. We don't really need to know it exactly, but all we need to know is if you're doing well, the questions keep getting harder. You don't get more time though. So that means that somebody who walks into the test will have a lot of hard questions, while somebody else might potentially have a lot of easy questions. So let me ask you a question. Please let me know in the chat box. Would you like to walk into a test that has a lot of hard questions, or would you like to do a test that has a lot of easy questions? It's maybe a little counterintuitive. Yes, thank you. Hard, definitely hard. This is the only way to get a high score, is to deal with many hard questions. Now, somebody's asking whether the test is proctored. Absolutely it is. The test is live proctored, and it's also video and audio recorded. If you go to a test center, everything's video and audio taped. If you're doing the test at home, you will have a webcam, and everything also will be video and audio taped. And if you're doing the test at home, the video of your entire test is going to be run through an artificial intelligence machine that flags potential cheating. So that's why it's pretty much impossible to cheat on that test, because the test even tracks your eye movement. Well, let me ask you a question then. We spoke about a few reasons why the GMAT might be hard. And one of them, of course, is that the questions keep getting harder and we don't get more time. What are some of the other reasons why the math on the GMAT could be hard? Let me know. In fact, this is going to be the interactive part of our seminar. I'm going to launch a quick poll just so you can share, perhaps just get it out of your system. Just vent about why this is hard and why do we have to deal with this, and that's really unfair, and how can they do this to us, right? Those people, especially because, just like many of you are saying so far, it's been a while since I've done this sort of math. I mean, middle school, right? And most of us have a bachelor's degree by now. Questions are confusing, yeah. No calculators. How's that? We tend to rely on these machines quite a lot, and now we have calculators on our phones. So of course we do all the calculations with the calculator. We had a student a few years ago, for the life of her, she couldn't add 5 and 8, and she worked as a financial advisor in a bank. And I'm like, can you please explain to me how is it that you work in a bank and you can't add 5 to 8? She's like, oh, that's very simple. I deal with people's money. I'm not allowed to do any calculations in my head. Even if I add 1 plus 1, I must use a calculator. So, wow, okay, that makes sense. Let's learn some new skills, because that's not what you can do on the test. Many of you are saying questions are confusing, easy to make a simple error. So I'm going to tell you a strategy, share a strategy with you today, how you can avoid or reduce dramatically your computational errors, and of course, time pressure, very little time per question. Again, the strategy of how you can reduce computational errors is also going to be the strategy of how you are going to save some time. Let me show you a question. I think it's going to demonstrate really well some of the things that you might need to do on a test. I might maybe want to do on the test. So here's the question. what could be the value of 4x in the equation x cubed minus 8x squared plus 4x plus 48 equal to 0? All right, well, that's a cubic equation, and it is possible to actually solve it. I'm sure that most of us don't remember how exactly to solve a cubic equation, especially in 2 minutes without a calculator, right? By the way, just for a full disclosure, there are a lot of questions on the internet that are made to look like GMAT questions. And very often they will use some complicated math because a lot of these questions are made by people who are math savvy. So they want to make questions harder because sometimes they also use these questions not just for the GMAT, but when they teach some other tests, like, for example, CAT, if you're familiar with Indian tests. So they would create questions that could be kind of reused throughout the entire spectrum of the tests. And they will put these kinds of things in the test. But the GMAT isn't about that. In fact, just for full disclosure, this question, exactly this question, could never show up on the GMAT because, yes, wow, that's so impressive. I am actually so impressed that some of you got an answer. And I'm so impressed that some of you, while we were just rambling about how complicated this math on this question, you were actually able to solve it and you actually got an A. I'm so glad you got an A because I got you in a trap. So here's what we could do. And I'll get to this. I'll get to why A is a trap. So here's what we could do. If this were to show up on the GMAT, one of the things, yes, thank you. Oh, now you corrected yourself. Here's what you could do is we could actually, instead of trying to solve this, what we could do is plug in the numbers from the answer choices and see which one will answer the question. So instead of me trying to somehow solve this cubic equation, and there is a way to do this, by the way, you probably learned this in high school, I can just take the number from the answer choice, plug it back into the question, and see if I get a 0. And obviously, only one of these would give me a 0 at the end. The only thing I need to remember is to divide by 4. So if I use this strategy, and if I try answer choice A, and if I plug it back into the question, I'm not plugging 4, I'm plugging in 1. Because the question was, what could be the value of 4x? So if 4x is equal to 4, x is equal to 1. So if I'm testing A, I'm going to plug in 1. If I'm testing B, I'm going to plug in 1.5. Hopefully, I don't want to test B, but this feels like it might be a lot of work, but you could do that. I'll probably skip a 6 because it's not divisible by 4. Maybe then I'll test the 16 and see what happens. And if I do get 0, once I do all the calculations, that will be my answer. So a little better, right? Because at least for that, we don't need to actually know how to deal with cubic equations. Most people don't know that, so most people are going to spend like 10 minutes trying to figure that out. No, just test the numbers. But here's another way. Let's call it the mastery way. This is when you really master the test. This is almost like you're feeling like a Neo from the Matrix, and you can see through the tricks. And one person here actually did the calculation and said the answer was A, but then corrected herself and said, oh no, it's actually C. So what was that silly mistake that a lot of people are making is they find X, right? Or they plug in X. And that's why A is 4, because if you plug in 4, you're actually going to get a 0. That's why most people here get an A. See how the GMAT is tricking us? I mean, there's so much information here. We'll say, okay, I'm going to plug in 4. So 4 cubed minus 8, 4 squared plus 4 times 4 plus 48. That's actually is equal to 0. Okay, A, move on. I'll actually try to solve it and get 4 as an X. But see, the question was asking us for 4x. And the GMAT knows that most people will make this silly mistake. So here's what the GMAT is going to do. The GMAT is going to try to trick us. And it will make sure that 4 is a trap answer. But of course, we're looking for 4x, not x. So what if instead of doing all of that work, we just look through the answer choices and notice if we get any pair of answers where one's exactly 4 times the other. You get 4 and 16. That's the only pair of answers. And just for the record, 16 times 4 is not 48. So that's not another pair. And 6 times 4 is not 36. So there's really just the only pair of answers where one is x and one is 4x is 4 and 16. So the answer then, by this logic, has to be 16. Because we're looking for 4x and we know the GMAT knows people are making these silly mistakes. So we are going to use this knowledge to our advantage. Now, let me be very honest with you here. Most people who have a math background will not be comfortable doing this. They'll say, okay, well, let me double check it, or let me actually solve it. But if you change your perspective a bit and stop thinking of the GMAT as a game of math and start thinking of the GMAT as a game of logic, or maybe even if you are, let's say, playing poker sometimes and you're taking some bets, then I think you can do pretty well on the GMAT. Because in this question, I'm like 95% sure the answer is C. I can probably, if I do have time, I will maybe test it. I'll actually take 4 and plug it back in just to be 100% sure. But sometimes being 95% sure is good enough if I can do this in 10 seconds. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying that to really do well on the GMAT, you will have to get a little outside of your comfort zone and perhaps learn some new skills. But that's exactly what the GMAT calls higher order reasoning skills. By the way, this is a strategy that I've actually shown to the GMAT people at one of the conferences. Just a few years ago, I walked up to them and I said, look, this is pretty much in almost no GMAT book will ever teach that, but do you know that this strategy actually exists, that people, instead of doing these long calculations, they can just use the tricks that you're trying to play against the test? And they're like, yeah, we know that. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you try to trick these people? And I know we always say, like, if x is there or if 4x is there, and x should also be there. And you're probably thinking, most people know that, so I'm not going to put the x. And I'm like, well, but how many people really know this strategy? Maybe like 1 in 100. How many people make a silly mistake? 70 in 100. So I say, no, we're going to keep that strategy. I hope you enjoyed this question. Let's actually do another question. Let's deal with an algebra question from an official GMAT guide. So it is a question that appeared in one of the past exams. It is actually in the official guide. Please don't look it up. Again, this is just going to spoil our learning. Please don't try to Google it either. So here's the question. You're given a table. You have a question that's associated with this table, and you have 5 answer choices. 1 of them is correct. 4 of them are not. I'm going to give you about a minute to try to figure out which one's right. There are about 15 seconds left. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in 5 seconds. If you still haven't chosen the answer, just maybe select what you think is the right answer. And I'm going to share with you what most people have chosen. So here we go. Let me share the results with you. As you could see, most people voted for D. Many people also voted for E, and one person in the chat voted for C. So C, D, and E. D obviously has to be the right answer because most people voted for D. All right, let me ask you a question. While you were doing this question, did you ever at any point in time have a formula or an equation that looks something like this? Just let me know in the chat box if you had the formula or an equation that looked something like this, because this is actually how you can find X. Something similar to that? No? Okay, great. So if not, let me know, how did you do this question? This is the actual formula you would write if you were to try to find X, algebraic way. I like to call this the work hard way. We're all hard workers, right? We all like to work hard. Or maybe we just say that we like to work hard, but we don't really like to work hard, right? How do we want to like? How do we want to work? We like to work smart. This is a lot of hard work. By the way, how hard is this question, you think? Oh, thanks so much for sharing. Somebody's saying also 32 plus 37, that's 69. A third of 69 is 23, so the answer is 23. Okay, great. How hard do you think is this question? You know, is it easy? Is it medium? Is it hard? Is it very hard? What do you think? Or maybe if you were to assign like a number from 200 to 800, where would it be? Would it be like a 200 level question where almost everybody can get it right? Or would it be like a 700 level question where maybe only about 10% of people get it right? Because that's really what the scores are about. 250. Wow. All right. Well, you know what? Let's not guess. Because the only way for us to see how hard is this question is to see how many people get it right. So some of these GMAT forums, for example, GMAT Club, they have a lot of people who go there and kind of debate about the question. There's so much information there. You can literally spend years and years looking through the posts and just see what people think. But they do ranking of questions based on how many people on that website get that question right. So here's what they've found. This question is classified as very hard. By the way, just again, for full disclosure, most people who are on these websites, GMAT, Quad, Beat the GMAT, they're people from, usually from some Asian countries who are very good in math. That's the main audience for these websites, right? So very hard, right? A lot of people who have a math background find this question very hard. Essentially, this is just for experts. This is a 700 level question, by the way. So only about 10% of people or less or fewer than 10% get this question right. So obviously a very hard question, right? And if we try to work hard, it will be very hard. But let's try to work smart. I'm going to take a couple of steps to try to simplify this question. First of all, if I'm given the percentage of marbles in each bag that are blue, and I have the number of marbles in each bag, I can probably calculate how many blue marbles are there in each bag. So 10.8% of 37, that's going to be, I mean, this really has to be 4, right? Because I can only have a whole marble. I can't have 4.2 marbles. So yeah, that's 4. And 32, 50% of 32, that's 16. And 66.7%, that's actually 2/3. 66.7 is 2/3. And because I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I can be pretty sure that it's actually exactly 2/3, because especially the numbers are quite small. They're not like in the thousands where I could get a rounding error. So if we were to try to work smart, let me ask you one question before we move any further. What have we learned so far about the number of marbles in back Q? Something we learned about the number of marbles in back Q so far. What have we learned? Yeah, 2/3 of them are blue. What does this mean about this number? If 2/3 of them are blue, what has to be true about the number X? Yes, Dan is saying it has to be divisible by 3. What answer choices are not divisible by 3? We can probably get rid of them right away because the number has to be divisible by 3, right? We need to take 2/3. 5 is not divisible by 3, obviously. 9 is. 12 is. Is 23 divisible by 3? No. Is 46 divisible by 3? No. Let me again share the results with you. So D and E can't even be the right answers because they're not divisible by 3. I haven't really done any math here. So let me ask you a question. How many answer choices are left? And of these answer choices that are left, how many of these do we need to try? Remember when we dealt with our cubic equation, we said, well, we can just try the numbers. You know, we have 5 answer choices, plug them in. In that case, we didn't need to try all 5. But there's almost always a strategy to try fewer. And here we got 2 answer choices. So how many of them do we actually need to try in order to find the right answer? Yes, thank you, Dan. Only 1. Because if I try 9 and it's right, it's right. If I try 12 and it's wrong, it's wrong. Or if I try 9, it's wrong, it's 12. That's it. So let's try. I mean, it doesn't really matter. One person chose C, nobody chose B. So why don't we try C? So C is 12. That means we actually have 12 marbles in back Q. So we're going to pretend that we know the answer, that the answer is actually 12. We're going to calculate all the numbers and see if everything works out. If it does, then obviously C is the right answer. So we have 12 here. 2/3 of 12 is, of course, 8. And then we can add up all the numbers. 37 plus 12 plus 32. That gives us actually 81. And 4 plus 8 plus 16. That gives us 28. Let me ask you a question. Is 28 1/3 of 81? Because it's supposed to be 1/3, right? So far, we've figured out how many blue marbles are there in each back. We pretended that we know the number of marbles in back Q, but we haven't used the fact that 1/3 of the total marbles are supposed to be blue. So is 28 1/3 of 81? Yes or no? No. Yes. Thank you. It's not. So that means that 12 is not the right answer. That means that 9 has to be the right answer. That's it. We're done. By the way, how did we figure out that 28 is not 1/3 of 81? Well, I mean, a couple of ways that we can do this, but one of the ways is 81 is actually some odd number. And 4 plus 8 plus 16 is some even number. An even number cannot be 1/3 of an odd number. So that's it. 12 is not the answer, so 9 is the only one that's left. Let me ask you a question. How much algebra did we do? Not too much, right? In fact, no algebra. So what's the chance of us making a mistake? Some sort of a computational error here in this question. Is it high? 2/3 of 12? That's not that hard. Half of 32, 10.8% of 37. It's not that hard. Even number or odd number, not that hard. So chance of making a computational error is not that high. Will this approach take less time? Yes, because we are doing fewer calculations. We're using our reasoning skills, but we're not doing too much math. So let me ask you a question. Which of the approaches would you enjoy more? Work smart or work hard? And only you can decide that. And most importantly, maybe ask yourself this question. What would a successful manager or successful CEO would do? Would a successful CEO prefer to work hard or work smart? I was reading an article that an average CEO in Canada by 9:43 a.m. on January 3rd made as much money as an average worker. So obviously they don't work too hard. They work smart. And if you want to become a CEO, it's time to learn how to work smart. Now, we spoke about thinking like a CEO, and like, what does it actually mean to think like a CEO? Daria was saying, I learned how to think like a CEO. Well, let me actually show you a question. And perhaps we can learn a little bit how to think like a CEO. Because I think at some point, if you're trying to go into a business school, I can just hallucinate that many of you might be maybe targeting to become a CEO one day and make lots of money and maybe change the world and make it a better place. So let's look at a question. This is going to be a data sufficiency question. And if you've never seen a data sufficiency question, by the way, don't worry. You're going to see one now. Please look at this question. First, I'm going to give you time to read it. I just want to explain how this question is laid out. You have a question that contains some information and the question built in. In order to answer this question, you always need some additional information. The information, the question itself, is not enough. Unlike the problem-solving question, where you do have enough information to answer the question, in that sufficiency, you never have enough information in the question itself. You do need some additional information. The information is going to be in the statements. By adding the information from the statements to the question, you may or may not be able to answer the question. And if you look at the answer choices, you would notice the numbers are actually not among the answer choices. The answer choices simply tell us which of the statements would be sufficient to answer the question. So your job is not actually to find the discounted price of a second shirt, is to simply figure out if the information in statement 1 would be enough for us to find this discounted price of a second shirt, or maybe information in statement 2 would be enough, or maybe we need both of these together, or maybe even if we take them together, we still don't have enough information to definitively answer the question, what was the discounted price of the second shirt? I'll give you about a minute and a half. Look at the question, think about what's missing, look at the statements, think about how you can use this information and whether you can actually find the discounted price of a second shirt. Based on what you find, you should be able to find the answer A, B, C, D, or E. Please don't bother about actually finding the discounted price. It's not that important. As long as you know that you can find it, that's all that you need. So there you go. You have about a minute and a half. Oh, this looks challenging. A lot of people still haven't answered this question. I'm going to give you another 20 seconds or so. Try to take a guess if you don't know. All right, let me go ahead and end the poll and show you what we've actually collectively voted for. So as you could see, D or C seems to be the most popular answer, followed by B, followed by A, and somebody saying data sufficiency questions give me so much anxiety. Yes, because they're very conceptual. So we do really have to get outside of our comfort zone. And that's why for many of us, we are not used to doing this. In fact, many of us are doing data sufficiency questions, but are trying to solve a problem and seeing if we can actually do that. And I mean, let me ask you a question. Is it easier to figure out if your team can do the job, or is it easier for you yourself to do the job? Of course, as a manager, it's easier to figure out if a team can do the job. So that's what data sufficiency questions are. And that's how they're different from problem solving. In problem solving, you actually have to solve a problem. In data sufficiency, you only need to figure out if it's possible for you to solve the problem, and then you give it to somebody else to solve it. That's very managerial. That's why this question appears only on the GMAT and some of the other tests that are actually designed by the Graduate Management Admissions Council. Well, this was an official question from the official GMAT guide. And I wanted to first show you an official explanation from the official GMAT guide. Here's what it says. Let R be the regular price, and D be the discounted price, and P1 be the first profit, and P2 be the second profit, and P1 plus P2 is equal to P1, and and we can figure out dollar value of D. I don't know about you. This gives me anxiety. And I have a master of mathematics. So perhaps let's pretend that this is not a math exam, that this is actually a management exam. Let's learn how to think like a CEO. This is, if you come to our course, the GMAT Mastery course, from day one, we're going to be teaching you how to think like a CEO. There's a set of skills that every single class we're going to be drilling. And of course, we're going to apply these skills to a variety of different scenarios, and we'll teach you some of the more advanced, some of the more specific strategies. But we're always going to bring it back about what the test is all about. So let's pretend we are a CEO. I'm a CEO of this clothing store. I sell shirts. Customers come into my store, and sometimes they buy shirts. But my shirts are regular price. So how many of you like to buy stuff at regular price? Yeah, if you really need a shirt, you're gonna walk in and buy it at a regular price. But usually, you'll buy it when it's on sale, because we all love saving money, right? So I'm gonna create a sale. I'm gonna say, today we have a BOGO sale. Buy one, get one at a reduced price. If you buy one shirt and you pay the regular price, you're gonna get the second shirt at a reduced price. And you only get that if you buy two shirts. And if I'm going to create this sale, I'm going to price the second shirt in such a way that as a store, I'm not making any profit on the second shirt. Because the question told us the store makes the same profit for the sale of two shirts that it makes from the sale of one shirt. So that means I'm selling the first shirt at a profit. The second shirt, I'm selling at a zero profit, basically at my cost. I'm still winning because people wouldn't have bought any shirts, but they walk in, they like the sale, they could have bought just one shirt, now they bought two. I didn't make any money on the second one, but I did make my profit on the first one, and I sold a lot more shirts because people like the sale. That's thinking like a CEO. So what does this mean? This actually means that the discounted price of the second shirt is equal to my cost. I'm making no profit. No profit means revenue equals to cost. So when you walk into the store and you see the price of the first shirt, the price of the regular price is this, the discounted price is this, the discounted price is actually equal to the cost to me, the store. I buy the shirts at this cost, I'm selling them at the same cost, the second shirt. So now, let's see what the statements can give us. Statement 1 gives us the regular price. Well, it's okay. It's nice to know the regular price, but we don't know the discount. We don't know the discount percentage or the discount amount. Don't really know anything about the discount. So simply knowing the regular price is definitely not enough. But how about the second statement? The second statement gives us the cost to the store. And that actually gives us exactly what we need. Remember, we said, oh, we need to know, in order to find the discounted price, we need to know the cost. We did a little bit of thinking up front. We used our reasoning skills. We thought like a CEO, and we found our answer. And we didn't need to do any math. And the answer is B. Only statement 2 is sufficient. No other statement was needed. Most of the people chose C because you thought that maybe you need to know both the regular price and the discounted price, but no. To answer this question, the question was just about the discounted price only. That's really all we need. Now, this, by the way, will require some confidence, right? You have to know what you're doing, basically, if you want to deal with these questions. But this is absolutely something you can develop. In fact, I want to show you something real quick. I wanted to show you this person. Let me just show it to you real quick. So here's the person. She came to us in 2020. And when I originally spoke with Darini, she was trying to study for about 4 years. And the GMAT was giving her so much anxiety, just like somebody said here in the chat box, that sufficiency gives you anxiety. So the GMAT was giving her so much anxiety that she was pretty much ready to give up. She was already at the time in her career where she had about 10 years of experience. She's like, I don't might do my MBA now. I'm probably never going to do it. So I can't really conquer this GMAT. So that's it. I'm ready to give up. And then somebody recommended her to come and look into our course. And I spoke with her and she said, Sergey, I don't believe this is possible. You know, I've tried everything. And then what did you try? Well, I tried every book. I have all of them on my shelf. I pull them up every couple of weeks. I try a few questions. I realize it's not working and the books go back to the shelf. It's been 4 years. I said, okay, Darini, well, let's maybe readjust your study plan. Maybe let's look at this a little bit differently. And maybe you can start learning with other people so that you can get a little bit of motivation and maybe have a little bit of fun. And it was just when the pandemic started, so it was something to do for people. And here's what she actually says. I just wanted to play this very, very short clip to you. And let me know if you can, let me know in the chat box if you can hear the audio.
Hello everyone, my name is Darini. I was with Admin Master in 2020. I did the Virtual Mastery GMAT class. I came to meet Admin Master when I was trying to do my GMAT. It was terrible on me, to be honest. I thought I could do it on my own. In the end, I realized Admin Master made me save so much time because they were giving me, first of all, moral support. They were my best cheerleader, and to be honest, that has no price at all. They helped me jump from a score of 500-ish to 700. And thanks to them today, I'm at Oxford Side Business School, where I'm doing my first week of class now. And to be honest, Admin Master was a definite stepping stone in this. They were helping me so much with giving me strategies, helping me focus on my time management and so on. So definitely do not hesitate. These are your best allies when it comes to the GMAT. Take care, everyone, and good luck in your GMAT.
And Darini just recently graduated from Oxford Side. She works for the United Nations, and she just has basically changed her career completely. She moved to Europe, and her life is very, very different because at some point she just said, I'm not going to give up. So please don't be afraid of the GMAT. Now, by the way, and we will do some more questions today, I promise. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this course because while Darini, for example, got a 700, got into Oxford. So what is a 700? And do you need a 700? And how do you actually get a 700? What exactly do you do within these 3 months? Well, first of all, it really depends. It depends on what school you want to go to and whether you want to get some entrance scholarships. By the way, we are going to be doing some seminars about how to get entrance scholarships, so please stay tuned. I'm going to tell you how to get them. They are also free. So for example, if you want to go to some of the top US schools that of course are the most competitive business schools in the world, then you need to be at a pretty high percentile. An average score at schools such as Wharton, Kellogg, Stanford is usually in the top 3 to 5%. So that's pretty high. If you are planning to apply to a school in Canada, most of the top Canadian schools will have average scores somewhere in the top 25 to 20%. And of course, the average score on the GMAT is about 560. And the 700 is actually an 88th percentile. So many people ask when they are about to study for some test, or maybe for the GMAT, they are trying to choose their GMAT study program. They usually ask, what's the success rate? And how do you actually define a success rate? Because it's impossible to fail the GMAT, right? Even if you do everything wrong, you're going to get a 200. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you this question. In general, worldwide, what percent of people get scores of 700 plus on the GMAT? What do you think? Let me know in the chat box. What do you think is that percentage of people? 3%, 5%? Well, if you actually look at the graph, it will show us that it's 12%. Because 700 is 88th percentile. That means when you are getting 700, you beat 88% of people, and you're in the top 12%. However, the official answer from the GMAT is 0.3%, because the way they calculate the success is a little bit differently. See, are you familiar with what's called a funnel? It's very commonly used in marketing. So what's a funnel? It's essentially how people learn, how people get from being interested in something to actually buying something. You know, that's a funnel. So how many people are interested in doing the GMAT? Every year, approximately 7 million people. So the GMAT has their way of figuring out how to do this for their marketing purposes. So about 7 million people, unique people a year, are interested in going to a business school studying for the GMAT. Of these 7 million people, 2 million people are getting more serious. They actually say, okay, I got to study for the GMAT. I'm going to buy a book or download a practice test. I'm going to start studying. They actually create an account on MBA.com. They put their name, their email address, their phone number. They have an account on MBA.com or GMAT.com. 2 million people. How many people of the 2 million do you think will actually end up doing the real test? I was talking to one of our clients today. He is about to do his test, and he's doing quite well in the practice tests. And he actually told me that he knows a few friends who gave up on their MBA program because they just couldn't do the GMAT. So I said, well, show them your score after tomorrow, and then maybe send them our way. But I know a lot of people who are giving up because they think, oh, the GMAT is just this, this wall that I have to climb. And, I really, once I do the GMAT, I'm going to choose my school, because if I don't do well, I'm going to go to a school that's not very good. It's not a very good logic. I'm going to actually show you how you can make sure that you don't fall into this trap. But out of 2 million people, only about 10% will actually do the real test, and 90% of people will not do the real test. They give up. At some point, they give up. So that's the funnel for the GMAT. So of 7 million prospects, only 200,000 become their customers. And of these people, only 24,000, so approximately 12% of 200,000, will get scores of 700 or more. So worldwide, approximately 24,000 people every year who get scores of 700 or more. And if you look at how many people thought about doing the GMAT, wanted to go to a business school, and how many people actually got a score of 700 and probably used it to get to a top business school, that's 1 in 300. So speaking about chances, right? So when people ask me, well, what's my success rate? Well, am I guaranteed to get a 700? I usually say, well, look, we're not the people who are going to give you some false promises. I know if you go on different websites, you can see all kinds of promises. In fact, here's one. I have just taken this screenshot from one of the websites. And I'm not going to say what website it is. It's very easy to find because if you go on GMAT forums, this website is very heavily advertised. They spend literally tens of thousands of dollars a month advertising on this website so that more and more people go to their website and take their course. Here's what they say. The average score is 730. And 92% of people get scored of 700 or higher. Really? 92% of people get scored of 700 or higher by just following a self-study program? To me, that's called a false promise. I haven't met any person who took that program on that website who scored 700 or more. So I don't know about 92%, right? So I have to be honest with you. The GMAT is a hard test. And I would be lying if I say 92% of our people, of our students get scores of 700. That's impossible. Impossible. I'm going to show you the percentage just for full disclosure. So the GMAT is a hard test, but I've seen so many people improve scores 300 points, 400 points. Somebody getting from 230 to 670. It's possible. You just need to have the structure, the right strategies, and perhaps the right support. Anybody can get a score of 700. The reason why some people don't achieve it is A, they might not have access to the right resources or the right strategy, the right coaching, or they don't have the right structure. That's reason number one. And reason number two, sometimes they just don't need or they don't want a 700 score badly enough. Now, I don't know about you, but I got a score of 750 on the GMAT. And now if I were to do my MBA, I would probably go to some of the best schools in the world because now I know I went to a school that was okay. It was a good school. But I know the difference between going to like the very best school and the school that's maybe not that great and the school at the bottom of the list. And the difference is literally in hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, millions of dollars over your lifetime. The return on investment on the MBA program is somewhere in the range of $3 to $8 million on average. So would an investment of studying a bit for the test justify getting millions of dollars throughout our career? Yes, if this is the career that you want. But it is hard, and not everybody can do it because not everybody is committed. I want to show you one question that I actually pulled from this GMAT forum that was actually from that website. So here's a question, and I just wanted to show you a bit of a difference of the different approaches. So this website that claims that 93% of people get scores of, like 730 an average test. Yeah, so here's a question from this website. If a radius of a circle is decreased by 10%, what would be the percentage change of the area of this circle? You have 5 answer choices, 5, 10, 19, 20, and 21. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to figure out the answer. All right, let me end the poll right now and actually show you how we could possibly do this question. Let me first of all share the results with you. As you could see, A, B, and D are the popular answers. So we'll get back to this and we'll actually see whether it's A, B, or D. So first of all, this is a visual question. So in order to do this question, you probably want to jot down a couple of circles. And here's actually how this question looks like. We have a bigger circle. We decrease the radius by 10%. And we've been asked what's the percentage change of the area. So the way that this particular website that claims that people are getting 730 and 92% of people are doing really well, the way they explain it is this. A is equal to pi r squared. And we have the new radius, which is 9/10 of an r. We have the new area, which is that. And then, of course, we can calculate the percentage change, which is simply that. And of course, the answer is obvious. Yes, possibly. If I have a lot of time, I can possibly do this. Or if I practice for years, I can probably do this. But I don't have years, and I don't have that much time on the question. I need to get this question done quicker. I give you 30 seconds. Believe it. Believe me, it was plenty. So here's what we actually could do if we approach this from a different perspective, not just from the theory perspective that you can read in the book or on many of these websites, but really from the skills perspective, from the mastery perspective. Here's what we can do. Knowing that a is equal to pi r squared is actually quite important. It's good to know these basic formulas. But then let's try to simplify this. Let's just imagine that the old radius was 10. We don't know what the old radius was, and it's not that important because we're dealing with percentages. So whatever we pick for a number for an old radius is going to cancel out anyway once we calculate the ratio. So let's just say it was 10. And if it was 10, the old area was 100 pi r squared. So 10 squared times pi, that's 100 pi. Well, if the old radius was 10, the new radius, of course, will be 9. And the new area is 9 squared times pi, which is 81 pi. So let me ask you a question. What's the change from 100 to 81? The decrease by 19%. We were asked by the percentage change. Well, here we're dealing with a decrease, so decrease by 19%. With very little math, we can get this question right. And the answer was actually C. Nobody voted for C. So let me ask you a question. How did I know to pick 10 for a radius? How did I know that it's even a good strategy to pick a 10 or pick some number for radius? And how did I know to pick 10? Well, that all comes with learning the strategies, because there was a very specific clue here in the question that told us that I can pick a number. And it was specifically here in this question. I'm going to give you a little preview of what's coming your way. The clue here was percentages in the answer choices. And I specifically picked a number that would very easily would give me 100%, which was 10. And if you learn the strategy, you practice enough, you're going to literally kill the GMAT. Let me show you an example. Here's Dylan. He actually works or used to work for one of the management consulting firms. So I don't know if you know any management consultants, people who work like 60 hours a week. They do that for 2-3 years, and then they become a CEO of some big company. So certainly a job that many people want to get. And when he came and said, look, guys, I literally don't have time. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to just follow exactly what you tell me to do. I'm not going to go look for any other resources. Just tell me exactly step by step what I need to do. Just give me the resources, give me the materials, show me how to do it. That's it. I don't have time for anything else. It took him about 4 months, including 6 weeks in class. He got a score of 740. And it was enough to apply to one of the top US schools where he actually applied successfully. So the resources you choose are important, but also how you structure your studies are very important. And as part of our program, we do include everything you need. So the classes, the materials, the visual guide, our own workbook, the online portal, the mock exams, everything's included. I'm going to show you this to you a little bit later. But I wanted to show you, I promised I'm going to give you a formula of how you can learn any skill. So this is going to be my gift to you for our New Year's resolution, January 5th, so that you can hopefully learn a lot of new skills in 2023. I'm going to use an analogy because I love analogies, and I think analogies help us relate to something we already know. And I'm going to use an analogy of another exam. But I won't use an analogy of an exam that we done in a college. I'm going to use an exam that most of us have done at some point, and that's a driving test. Because when you went for a driving test, the tester, the examiner didn't really ask you, well, tell me what you would do if you were to change lanes. They just say, okay, let's go on the highway. Let's change some lanes. Let's see how you do it. So they were evaluating your skills. If you want to be really good at driving, maybe, take up a McLaren and go on the racetrack for a couple of laps. If you want to be really good as a driver, simply reading a book, a driver's handbook, is obviously not enough. If you remember, when you got your driver's license, you went actually through 3 steps. 3 steps were not designed by the Ministry of Transportation. And I didn't, unfortunately, come up with this. But we've adopted this to our course. And if you want to be successful in the GMAT or in any skill, these are the steps that you want to take. Any sport, any sort of, if you want to learn how to bake, how to cook, you're going to follow these 3 steps. Step number 1 is you need to know some theory. If you want to learn how to bake, you got to know some theory about the temperature and about the yeast and everything else. If you want to learn how to drive a car, you got to know some theory about the signs, and the red means go stop and the green means go. The same on the GMAT. If you want to be successful in the GMAT, you need to know the area of a circle is pi r squared, and the smallest prime number is 2, right? Like, you have to know these things. Fortunately, this is the stuff that we've learned in school. Most of us forgot this, so we need to remember it, revise it, right? So this is going to be essentially the review part of the exam. The exam isn't just review. In fact, some companies that prepare for the GMAT call themselves the something review. You're not really reviewing something. You're reviewing it in step 1. Otherwise, you have to learn. Because the stuff that I've shown you with the units, digits, and the pairing and some of the other strategies, it's something we've actually never learned. So how can we review something we've never learned? But this is the part that we've learned. So we can review it. How do you review it? Well, there are lots of resources, lots of materials. We usually recommend to our students to review either the theory from the official GMAT guide, or there are a couple of really good books as well. I'm going to send you some links to these books if you are interested, that are just going through the theory really well. Simply reading about the theory, though, is not enough. You have to practice it. If I ask you, how do you add 2 fractions? You'll say, oh, well, I take the common denominator. So, okay, that's nice. Let's add some fractions. Show me how well you can do it. The GMAT will never ask you, do you know how? The GMAT will simply say, do it. That's the direct business way of dealing with things. So that's why when you come to our class, we will actually give you access to an adaptive platform where you're going to be doing these exercises that essentially test how well you can calculate the area of a circle, how well you can find a verb that's misplaced in a sentence, how well you could add fractions, and so on and so forth. There's about 200 basic skills you're going to be practicing on before you even show up to our class. That's how you prepare. That's the review part. The second part was now you have to learn how to drive a car, right? You know the rules. Now you have to learn the strategies. So you have to learn the skill. You might know the rules. You might know that green means go and red means stop, but how do you actually go, right? You get in a car, okay, well, it's green, but what do I do to actually go, right? So now you need to learn the strategies. And we've learned the strategies usually all throughout our civilization by observing other people, by learning from the masters, from people who've done it for a long time. That's why there's a certified instructors who actually showed us how to do it. And this was important because we needed to learn these good strategies right up front before we make too many mistakes. Because if we start to learn how to drive a car by ourselves without any training, we'll probably get into trouble and get other people into trouble as well. On the GMAT, usually people don't approach this because most people think it's an academic test. They just read a book, they stop at step 1. They never get to actually learn the strategies from experts. And that's why many people give up. Like, you've seen this. Out of 7 million people, only 200,000 actually even do the test. So if you even do the test and get a 200, you're on the top 3%. And also, what do you think? When we're just starting to learn something, what is the chance we are going to make mistakes? What do you think? Big chance or small chance? Yeah, very high chance, of course. And many people, we're just used to not liking mistakes, right? We're used to beating ourselves up. say, oh, I'm so stupid, I made this mistake again. And that's why many people give up, because initially you don't see a lot of progress. Initially, a few years ago, I learned how to sail a boat. Do you think I was good at sailing a boat? Absolutely not. That's why I was on a boat with somebody else, first trying to watch what they do, and then driving the boat a little bit. And then eventually I tried to do it myself. I got into trouble a few times, got in the water, and then eventually I learned. So everybody makes mistakes at first. But people who succeed, they know how to overcome their mistakes because they get somebody who knows exactly what caused these mistakes to get them feedback. Sometimes you look at the question and say, I know the strategies, but I keep making mistakes. And a good instructor, just like a good doctor, you come to a doctor and say, I'm coughing, I don't know why. The doctor say, oh, you just need these pills, or here's what you need, or here's what's wrong, or get some warm tea, or whatever. A good instructor will give you feedback. That's why in our class, we have live classes where there's usually only about 10, 15 people. So you can get lots of feedback. And there's also one-on-one feedback outside of a class as well. So this is very important. And of course, it's important to learn the best strategies up front so that you don't make too many mistakes and don't give up. Because that brings us to the third step. Usually, if you are in the province of Ontario, where I am right now, after step 1, you pass the writing test. After step 2, you pass the G2 test, but you're not yet fully licensed. So that also means after you come to the GMAT classes, usually you're not yet ready to take the test. What else do you need? You need practice. Because of course, practice makes perfect, right? No. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes perfect only if we learn the best strategies up front, because practice makes a habit. If we practice strategies that work, we're going to succeed and we're going to get better and better because we develop good habits. If we practice strategies that don't work, we're going to get worse and worse, and we're going to stay there at the same level and we're not going to see improvement. So if you ever know anyone, or maybe maybe it was you who try to practice and you don't see progress, that just means you need new strategies. That's it. And then you learn these strategies, you practice more, you develop new habits. And you're going to be doing this by continuing after each class. We assign lots of homework. There's going to be homework after the class, after the course, after the 6 weeks. You're going to have some mock exams, full tests, shorter quizzes, 10 questions each, just so you can continue building that skill. So that no matter what the GMAT throws your way on the test, the GMAT will always give you questions you've never seen before. Because no question in the real test is ever from a book, obviously. And the GMAT also keeps track of the questions you've done. So if you do the test several times, every single time you're going to see new questions. So that's how you develop habits, right? I'll just give you a simple example. One of the habits that we teach you at the very, very first quant class is to stop and think about the strategy you're going to do. And we actually do a series of exercises in the class to show you and to kind of force you to think about the strategy before you do a lot of math. There's certain ways that we actually teach you and kind of maybe mess with your brain a little bit just to get you to do this. It's really fun. It's a lot of fun. But many people, what they do is they would actually just start doing questions. They just start doing math, and that's a habit. So if you develop a habit to stop and think versus a habit to just start doing math, you're going to be in a very different place on the day of the test. So if any of you are interested in joining our program, then let me tell you really, really briefly about that. And then I want to do another question and tell you about something that's really cool as well. If you want to join our program, it's a pretty intensive program. It's approximately 60 plus hours in a class over 6 or 12 weeks. The class is fairly small. It is fully interactive. If you decide to join us in person, if you're located in the city of Toronto or in the Greater Toronto area, you could join us in person. Anywhere in the world, you can join us online, but it's a live two-way video, audio, online class. So if I'm teaching a class or one of my colleagues, we are going to see you on a big screen TV. You're going to see everything that's happening in the classroom in high definition, 1080p. You will be able to see everything that people in the class are seeing and hearing. So your experience is going to be pretty much the same as if you were in a live class. if it's not possible for you to join in person. And if you do join in person, there's always an online backup as well. Unlike most other companies, we really want you to get that good score. Other companies do as well, but they also say, well, okay, if you want to repeat the class, you got to pay more. We don't do that. If you want to repeat the class, it's free for 1 year. We also give you 3 personal tutoring sessions. The personal tutoring on the GMAT is actually very expensive. I don't know if you've done any research, but it usually starts from about $200, $250 US and goes up. So we give you 3 personal tutoring sessions as part of a course. We've determined that most people just use 2 or 3 tutoring sessions after they've come to the class. And for many people, it was a barrier because they might have some questions. They might want to clarify a few things, maybe get a more personal feedback, and they didn't want to pay $250, $300 an hour. So we included 3 hours as part of a course. And the price of our course is about the same as everywhere else. So could you do a one-on-one consultation before you sign up for the class? Yes, absolutely. We offer free 20-minute consultations. You can go on our website, admitmaster.com, and we can do a free consultation. So our next class starts on January 10th, which is next Tuesday. And we also have a class at the end of January, which is going to be on weekend. So depending on your time zone, depending on what's more convenient for you, you can sign up for any of these classes. And we have a New Year's promotion, a New Year's gift only until tomorrow, January 6th. You can sign up for any of our classes and get a discount of $200. So of the regular price, you get $200 off, which is the biggest discount we ever offer. Usually you need to sign up at least a month in advance to get the $200 off, but now you can sign up for a course that literally starts in 5 days and you can get the $200 off. You can see everything at admitmaster.com/offer. You can also see some self-study options. There are self-study options to study with an instructor as well as without the instructor. So the GMAT Mastery On-Demand program essentially gets you access to the same as a live class, but you get to watch all classes in recording, but you still have all the coaching from the instructor. You still got all the hours, all the tutoring. You can still access everything for a year. So it pretty much is the same as a live class, just recording instead of a live class. And the GMAT Express option is completely self-study. It's very affordable. It starts from about $100. And if you get it for 3 months, it's about $200 or something. So very, very affordable, a lot more affordable than most other programs. And most importantly, you can try it absolutely free for 7 days. If you go to admitmaster.com/offer, you can see that there's a discount code for 30% off. So if you try it for 7 days and you like it, you can always upgrade, and it is very affordable, but you do have to go through it pretty much on your own. It's the same strategies, absolutely, that we teach in a live class, just it's you studying interactively with the computer. So again, try it out and see if you like it. That maybe is all that you need. Somebody's asking if you miss the January 10th start date. Absolutely. Once the January 10th course ends, there'll be another course that is going to start. I believe it starts at the end of February. That's going to be the next evening class. So after 6 weeks, each course is 6 weeks. At the end of the first evening course, then it's going to be the next evening course. And we've done this for many, many years. So this is how we usually do things. The evening course is in the evening, 6 to 10 p.m. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the weekend course is Saturday morning and Sunday morning from 10 until 2 Eastern time. So again, you can go on our website, you can see all the different options, you can see the comparison, you can see what's usually involved, admitmaster.com/offer. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I did want to show you one more question, and then we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to stay as long as it's necessary to answer any of your questions. So here's the question. This is actually one of my favorite questions. I love teaching this question because it's so complicated and yet so simple. Take a look at this question. Aaron will jog from home at X miles an hour and then walk back home by the same route at Y miles an hour. How many miles from home can Aaron jog so that he spends a total of T hours jogging and walking? All right, now I know you might be getting tired. We've been here for 1 hour and 57 minutes, but remember the exam is actually 4 hours. And this is a harder question, so you can definitely see it towards the end of your exam. How many of you would like me to read this again? Or how many of you are reading this again now? It was a little hard to catch what's going on here. And wait till you see the answer choices. Please tell me if the answer choices help us answer this question or if they make the question more confusing. What do you think? Do they help us or do they make the question more confusing? Yeah, absolutely. They make things harder. I like to see some numbers, but I don't see numbers here. So how do we approach this question? Well, first of all, let's just conceptually understand what's going on here. This person leaves home, goes for a jog, goes at a certain speed, X miles an hour, and then decides, okay, time to go home. He gets tired, walks back home at Y miles an hour. He was away for a total of T hours. And the question was, what was the distance to that place where he turned around? Okay, well, I know that in order for me to find the distance, I need to multiply speed by time. The only problem is I know the speed there and the speed back, but I only know the time together. So what I can do is I can maybe just build a few equations, like, for example, distance there and distance back, and times together would be t. Distances are the same. I can write a few equations, try to isolate the t. It looks like I have the x and the y. Okay, that's good, but I still have the t1 and t2. So how to actually get rid of them? So after about 5 minutes, most people just give up. Okay, the next question. I obviously am doing well if I see hard questions, right? But it's good to do to get the hard questions right. So how can we actually do this? Let's look at the master way of doing this question. Well, I know the distance is equal to rate times time, right? If I'm driving from Toronto to Montreal and I'm driving at 100 kilometers an hour, it takes me 6 hours, it's 600 kilometers. It's not that hard, right? It will never occur to me to do anything else with these two numbers. Like I'll never say, well, 100 kilometers an hour plus 6 hours, that's 106. How's that, right? How's that for finding the distance? So adding speed and time is not what we want to do. Take a look at the answer choices. Because we're dealing with variables, it's very easy to trick us into doing something we don't want to do. Like, do we really want to add x plus t? No. Do we really want to add x plus y plus t in D? No. Do we really want to add y plus t in E? No. Don't ever add speed and time. So now we're down to two answer choices. There are different ways to approach this, but I'm just going to say, you know what? I just need to look at one of these answer choices. Only one of them could be correct, so I'm going to look at A. If A is right, that's good. If it's wrong, that's C. So A tells me x divided by y, which is miles an hour divided by miles an hour, that's a ratio of two speeds. The ratio is just a number. The two speeds cancel out, times hours, I get the time. So answer choice A gives me time. Do I need time? The question was how many miles? So A is wrong, C is right. And honestly, I'm not even gonna care checking whether C is right. I've eliminated 4 answer choices. Only one of them is right. That's it. No math. It's a 700 level question. So if you learn these strategies, by the way, this is called dimensional analysis. There are a couple of ways of doing this question. You can also use an average speed. If you decide to come to a class, we're going to teach you all of these strategies. And of course, with enough practice, you're going to be very comfortable learning what strategy to use when. So we're very proud of the success of our students. Our students get an average score of 670. So I'm not going to lie to you and say it's 730. It's impossible because not everybody wants a 730, right? But I'm glad to say that most of our students get high scores higher than what they wanted. And it's very common that somebody would give me a call and say, Sergey, I just got this amazing score. What do you think I can do with this score? Now, I thought I'm going to get a 620. I just got a 700. What can I do? Can I get a scholarship? Can I go to a better school? And approximately 35% of our graduates achieve scores of 700 or more. So 35%, that, you remember we started with the chance of 1 in 300, here's a chance of 1 in 3. So it's not 100%, it never will be. But if you really want a score of 700, if you're committed, you can definitely be in this 35%. That's much better than being in 1 in 300, right? So ladies and gentlemen, we talked a lot about the GMAT. Has anyone ever got a score of 800? Yes, absolutely. I know 3 people who got a score of 800. They're all GMAT instructors. The highest score that one of our students ever got was 780. And honestly, the only reason why they didn't get an 800. That 800 literally requires years of practice. It's not worth it. Only about 20 people worldwide a year get scores of 800, and pretty much all of them are GMAT instructors. Just need so much practice to get to the score of 800, especially in the verbal section. So we spoke a lot about the GMAT. I wanted to also invite you to explore what else is required. There's going to be many different MBA events in January, February, and March. We are going to be offering free admission seminars. The first one is on January 23rd. If you go on our website, admitmaster.com, you can actually see a link to these free admission seminars. The first one is going to be about the resume. Then there's going to be a seminar about your interview, and then there's also going to be a seminar about scholarships. You can sign up for all of them. They're completely free. And if you do sign up, then we will send you a recording as well if you can't, for whichever reason, come. So ladies and gentlemen, this was really all I wanted to share with you today. So I wanted to ask you a question. And that's perhaps a question, and I'm going to answer all of your questions, by the way. I will stay, and I know there are a few questions here. I'm going to answer all of these questions, but I want to ask you a question. What's next for you? How important is the GMAT for you? If it is important, I'd love to chat. Honestly, the best part of my job is to seeing stories like the one of Darini, or when people are calling me, or one of our students wanted to get a part-time program, stay in his work. He ended up working across the world for McKinsey for some really cool projects. So seeing people, move places, move industries, and just make the world honestly a better place. Start new companies. Some of our clients started just some amazing companies in their MBA programs, and literally just change the world. That's amazing. That's the best part of my job. So I'd love to chat. I'd love to meet you. Anything I can do to help. If it's just a little bit of an advice, just sign up for a one-on-one. We're gonna spend 20 minutes together. If you want us to work together, if you feel like we can help, I'd love to talk about how we can possibly do this. So let me know. Let me know here in the poll, and I'll certainly reach out to you, and I'll send you an email, and we can pick a time, and we'll get to know a little bit more about each other. And hopefully I'll give you some good advice, so it's going to be worthwhile the 20 minutes of your time as well. And for me, I always love meeting great people, smart people, motivated people. So every time we talk, then it adds also to my network. We'll connect on LinkedIn. So I certainly love connecting with new people. I love my job. Thank you. So somebody's saying, I saw people on YouTube talking about getting 750 scores in 3 to 6 weeks of practice. How is that possible? Well, I'll have to tell you, I got a score of 750 after 2 weeks of practice because I had the skills. I just needed to learn a little bit about the GMAT. I once did a one-on-one consultation, and I remember a gentleman came into our office, actually in person, and said, I need some help with the GMAT. And, what would you suggest? I said, well, how much do you know about the test? I told him a little bit about the test, and I said, why don't you take a practice test? Here, we have this free practice test on our website. Why don't you go and take it? I said, okay, no problem. I'm going to go and take it. It was Friday. So Saturday, he calls me. I said, Sergey, you wouldn't believe it. I just got a score of 760 on my practice test. I said, I hadn't been studying. What should I do? I said, oh, book your real test for Monday. And that's what he did. And he got a score of 760. So that was the fastest anybody can get, in my knowledge, got a score of 760. It was literally like 3 days from the beginning of studying. So there are some people who do that. Usually, these are either people who already have the skills and they maybe have done some other tests. For example, when I did the LSAT, it took me like a couple of weeks and I got a score in top 1%, right? Because I already know how the tests work. So I just need to learn a little bit more about the new test. That's it. So it's usually these people, or sometimes it's just pure marketing. And somebody will say, well, I use this software and I got a score of 730. So if you use this software, you're also going to get a score of 730 in 3 weeks. It doesn't always work. The GMAT is a lot of work. All I have to say, I've seen people in 2 months get from 230 to 670. 2 months. That's much more impressive than somebody saying, I just read some book and got a 730. But it is possible, just not for everyone. So what I would suggest is this. Take a practice test. See what it's like. Maybe try a few online programs. You've been to this class, come to a verbal refresher class as well. Maybe sign up for a one-on-one consultation. Try our GMAT Express program for free for 7 days. See what resonates with you and see how much maybe progress you can make in a week. You may be one of the people who will actually do that. There is a number of people who will do that. Honestly, I was one of them. But there are also people who give up prematurely because they feel like they're not making progress, or they feel like it's not possible just because they didn't give themselves enough time or invested in the right resources. But I'm a very strong believer that anybody can get a score of 700. Anybody. The right coaching, the right amount of time, you can do that. One thing we love to do here at AdmitMaster, for us, we're a private company. We work with many business schools. Today is actually the seminar that we don't have any guest business schools just because all of the business schools are still on vacation. We wanted to do the seminar very early in the year just so we can get everybody's mind towards these New Year's resolutions. But pretty much all of the other seminars we're going to be doing for the rest of the year, we work with different business schools that come and spend some time here also talking about getting some application strategies and so on. So we've built our reputation over many, many years. And for us, the reputation is really, really important. So I know many people who do really well in the GMAT spend literally thousands of dollars studying for the GMAT. And that's why a lot of the, there's a lot of criticism about standardized tests, like it's not accessible to everyone. So we follow a little bit of a different strategy. I come from a very poor country originally. I was very fortunate to have good teachers. So our course is probably cheaper than most other courses. It's still, obviously, we have to earn the living and we have expenses. But our course, it's $1,500, $1,600, $1,700, depending on the option. If it's a live course, and we give you so much with free retakes and everything else. And most importantly, when you come to our class, you know exactly how much money you're going to spend. Because if you take our live class, everything's included. So you need coaching, hey, it's there. We give you 3 hours of one-on-one coaching, but we offer group coaching every week. Once you use your 3 hours of one-on-one coaching, which what we found what most people need anyway, you can keep coming to the group coaching. Usually there are like 3, 4, 5 people every week. We can do a bunch of questions together. You can come back and retake the class. You can be in a study group. We have a huge study community on Facebook. We have people on the WhatsApp group. We have people doing questions together. There's always support. Everybody's super friendly. Everybody comes. We don't just take anybody in our class. We want to make sure that when you come to our class, you're really committed and you're ready to do the work. Because again, for us, the reputation is really important. So if you're not ready to do the work, and if you think we're going to do the test for you, then probably this is not the right course. But if you're ready, if you're excited, if you're up for a challenge, and if you want a good score, that's the place to be. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure spending this one of the first few days of 2023 with you. Kunal was asking when the sale ends. So we have essentially, in order to get a $200 discount on our live course, you need to sign up at least 30 days in advance. So we have just this special New Year sale that any course, even the one that starts next week, is at $200 off. And that's only until Friday. Normally, to get the $200 off at this point, you have to sign up for a course that's at the end of February. But if you sign up by tomorrow, all you need to do is go on our website, fill out the form to join our class in January, any of the classes. And as long as you do that by tomorrow, we're going to give you a call sometimes on the weekend. We'll talk about the course, and you'll still be able to get the $200 off. If you're looking for a course much later in the year, or February later, as long as you sign up 1 month in advance, you will get the $200 off anyway. And the discount on the GMAT Express program, 30% off, is actually permanent. It's for you. It's not advertised on our website, but because you came here, we're going to give you 30% off on our self-study program. And the code, for as far as I know, the code works forever. But you can only find that code on the special page, admitmaster.com/offer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you lots of luck in this year. Sometimes you meet people and you just think, oh, they're so lucky. They got a score of 760, or they're so lucky they went into Harvard, Stanford, McGill, Rotman, Ivy, whichever school you want to go to. they're just lucky. But you know what? I don't think they're lucky. Maybe they were lucky with good teachers. And maybe in the past, when we went to school, we didn't really have a choice of a teacher, but now we do have a choice. So a lot of luck right now is really more of making the right decisions and the right choices. And sometimes maybe getting a little outside of a comfort zone and saying, look, I'm going to do something maybe that I didn't do before. But I know it's going to get me to where I need to be. So perhaps if I didn't get there yet, I need to do something a little bit different from what I did before. And that's my wish to you is during this year, 2023, to make lots of good decisions so that at the end of this year, your career will look very differently from what it looks right now. And by the very differently, I mean very, very much closer to where you want it to be, so that you are actually living your dream career, or you're getting very close to living your dream career. And for many of you, you might already be doing your dream MBA. And if you want to know again, if you want to chat a little bit more about, is the MBA the right choice? What can I do after the MBA? I'll give you my honest opinion. I have an MBA. I also know a lot of people who don't have an MBA. So I'll give you my very honest opinion. I can't make a decision for you, but I'll tell you everything I know. Just book a consultation. We'll spend 20 minutes together. So thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. I'll let you go, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care, and all the best this year.